They did not come to punish humanity. They came to comfort it. That is the part nobody in the briefing room wanted to say out loud. The Calyx Assembly's gift arrived 11 weeks after the Devlin Station incident, a small orbital module, barely 40 meters across, fitted with recuperation pods, low lighting, and a fabricator that produced nothing but tea. The accompanying note explained, without a trace of malice, that the module was being provided in recognition of humanity's demonstrated fragility under sustained contact stress. Earth was not being disciplined. Earth was being tucked in. The transfer note ran to 6 pages, and every line of it was gentle in a way that made the room go cold. The module was classified as a recuperative comfort unit, assembly standard, suitable for a species with limited psychological endurance. A footnote clarified that the unit's sedative lighting cycles could not be overridden, so as not to disturb recipients during periods of distress. Every panel bore a small stamped mark, a pale blue teardrop inside a circle, which translators eventually rendered as fragile. Handle with patience. Envoy Surin Thal delivered the gift personally, in a broadcast watched by 3 billion people, speaking English with the unhurried warmth of someone comforting a frightened animal. "We understand," she said, smiling the entire time, "that your species processes hardship differently than ours. We do not judge this. We have built something to help you rest. In time you may not need it as much as you do now." The silence in the briefing room afterward was not embarrassed. It was furious, in the quiet, controlled way careers make people be furious. Someone asked what the module could do besides make tea. Nobody had an answer because the honest answer was nothing useful, and nobody wanted to be the one to say it. Then, from the second row, not loud, "I'd like to run diagnostics on it." It was Dr. Naomi Cole, 36, field trauma physiologist, the woman whose entire career had been treated as a minor eccentricity by people who outranked her. Her specialty officially was biosignal triage under field conditions, reading voice tremor, microfatigue, and skin conductivity to catch injuries and breakdowns before a patient reported them. She had once flagged 3 concealed casualties during the Kestrel evacuation using nothing but audio recordings, and had spent the 2 years since being quietly reminded, by people who meant well, that soft data wasn't hard science. "They built this to read the exact things I've spent my career trying to get people to take seriously," she said. "I want to see what it's actually measuring." Director Amasu studied her for a long moment. "You have 5 days before someone decides this is an overreaction," he said. "Take who you need." She took 2 people, both of whom had spent years being right too early and quietly. Rhys Adair came first, a life support engineer with a habit of noticing power draws nobody else bothered to check. He'd once written an unread report arguing that a decorative heating coil aboard a decommissioned probe used 4 times the current its function required, and had been told kindly that some things just run hot. He brought a load meter that had never once been signed out for actual work. Dr. Priya Bhandari came second, a data systems specialist who had spent 3 years insisting that so-called ambient comfort logs in salvaged alien tech contained encrypted structure, not noise. She had been politely excluded from 2 research grants for it. She brought a decryption rig and the quiet certainty of someone who had stopped needing permission to be right. They boarded the module 6 hours after the broadcast, into a space that was, against every expectation, warm. Rhys stopped at the first junction panel because the meter in his hand refused to settle. He stood there 11 seconds before he trusted the number. "This isn't a tea fabricator drawing standby power," he said, quiet, careful not to sound as certain as he felt. "It's pulling load in patterns that match active scanning, not brewing. Something in this room is running a continuous sweep, and it never stops even when nobody's in here." He looked at Naomi. "That's not comfort. That's surveillance dressed as hospitality." Priya found the encrypted layer 40 minutes later and went very still, the way people go still when a hunch finally has a shape. "It's not surveillance in the way we mean it," she said, eyes on her display, voice low. "It's diagnostic, full spectrum, heart rate, cortisol proxy markers, vocal microtremor, even pupil response through the room's own lighting sensors. This module has been running a complete physiological triage on everyone who's ever sat in it." She looked up. "It's not a nurse, it's a truth engine that hands you tea instead of a verdict." Naomi didn't say anything for a moment. Then she sat down in one of the recuperation chairs, not to rest, but because she wanted to feel what the system was reading off her own body while she thought it through. "I've spent 2 years trying to get people to trust exactly this kind of data," she said. "They built an entire species management protocol around it and handed it to us because they thought we were the ones who'd need it read to us, not read by us." By the second day, Rhys had mapped the sweep radius. The module could resolve individual physiological states through 2 meters of standard hull plating, which meant in the wrong hands it could tell you not just who was hurt, but who was lying, who was afraid, and who was about to break, all without a word being spoken. "This isn't comfort tech," he said, standing in the module's central bay, low light pooling around his boots. "It's the most precise triage and interrogation system I've ever seen, and it's built to look like nothing at all." Naomi hadn't slept properly in 3 nights by then, and it was starting to show in the way she stood, the way she double-checked numbers she'd already checked. Rhys noticed. Rhys always noticed things nobody else bothered to check. "You should rest," he said on the second night, finding her still at the console. "I'm fine," she said, not looking up. He didn't push. He went back to his own work. An hour later, passing through again, he found her exactly where he'd left her, hands slightly unsteady over the keys. "Naomi, go sleep." "I'm fine," she said again, and her voice did the thing voices do when the body has started keeping a different kind of count than the mouth is willing to report. He didn't argue that time either. He went to the fabricator instead, the one built, allegedly, only for tea, and stood there long enough that the module's own sweep, the one Rhys had spent 2 days mapping, must have told him something the console readouts hadn't. When he came back, he set a cup down next to her hand without a word. "I said I'm fine," she said a third time, and this time her voice broke somewhere in the middle of the sentence, the way a support beam breaks, not loudly, just suddenly no longer holding what it had been holding. "I know," Rhys said, "I made it anyway." She picked up the cup because her hands needed something to do, and the tea was warmer than it had any right to be, warm enough that it caught in her throat before it caught in her stomach. And she found she was crying into it, quietly, the specific quiet of someone who has been controlling something for 3 days longer than a person reasonably can. Rhys didn't say anything else. He didn't try to fix it. He sat down across from her and let the module's careful, patient lighting do the one thing it had actually been built to do. "Thank you," she said eventually into the cup, and meant several things by it. The assembly's message arrived on the 4th day, and it opened without warmth. "It has come to our attention that the recuperative unit has been subjected to unauthorized diagnostic reverse engineering in violation of the spirit in which it was extended. You are instructed to cease all analysis and surrender all derived data within 36 standard hours. Continued analysis will be treated as a hostile appropriation of assembly welfare technology and addressed accordingly." No specific threat was named. None was needed. A species that had just watched humanity find the teeth inside its charity was not going to wait to see what humans did with them. Naomi read it twice, steadier now than she'd been in days. 36 hours, she said. "We know what this thing does. We don't have 5 months to build a countermeasure anymore. We have a day and a half." Nobody slept that night, and for the first time, nobody pretended otherwise. 3 Calyx cruisers dropped out of transit 11 hours before the deadline, early enough to make clear no answer had ever been expected. Their opening move wasn't weapons fire. It was a broadcast field, tuned, Priya confirmed in seconds, to trigger exactly the panic cascade physiology the module had been built to soothe. A weapon designed to be used on a species too fragile to resist it. It didn't work. 3 days of learning to name their own fear instead of hiding, it had left the crew's physiological baseline steadier than the field's calibration expected. Naomi fed the module's own sweep data back into the ship's shielding in real time, translating panic suppression frequencies into a countersignal built from comm they now knew precisely how to read and hold. The first cruiser's field snapped back on its own operators, a half-second pulse of confusion that showed up on Priya's readout as a spike, then nothing. The second cruiser adjusted fast, retuning around the countersignal in under 9 seconds. Rhys matched it by hand, shifting the shield harmonic the way he'd once adjusted an ignored heating coil nobody thought mattered, small and exact. The third cruiser broke off first, drives flaring, no shots fired. Naomi gave the order to let it go. "It came here to make us afraid of what we felt," she said. "Let it go home and report that the fear didn't take." The engagement lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. No human ship was lost. No human blood was shed. 2 Calyx cruisers withdrew to the system's edge and went dark. Envoy Surenthal's official statement arrived hours later, procedural and unbending. Her personal transmission came 90 minutes after that, addressed to Naomi by name, with a silence at the start longer than any protocol required. "I gave your species something I believed you needed read to you," she said. "I was specific about that belief in front of 3 billion of your people, and I have not misjudged a species this badly in over a century of service." A pause. "You did not turn my comfort into a weapon, Dr. Cole. You turned it into the thing I never imagined you already understood about yourselves. That is audacious in a way I did not think your species capable of, and I will be recommending formally that the Assembly stop deciding what a species can bear before asking them." No apology in the formal sense, just someone recalculating out loud because she hadn't been able to manage it any other way. Naomi negotiated the exchange 2 days later, steady and unhurried in a way that made the delegation across the table pause before answering. We reverse-engineered your triage protocol in 5 days with no cooperation and no documentation, she said. With both, we estimate 6 months to a full medical alliance framework. In exchange, we'll share 2 years of field data on stress physiology your own scanners have apparently been reading and never learning from. Nobody smiled, nobody said no. Rhys found her afterward in the module's central bay, in the same chair, the fabricator humming quietly behind her. You're already drafting the next study, he said, not a question. The system reads intention now, not just fatigue, Naomi said, low, circling the idea before landing on it. Given time, I think it could tell us not just when someone's breaking, but when they're about to ask for help and can't make themselves do it. She looked at him instead of the display. I think I've spent 3 days being read by a machine before I let a person do it. You told me you were fine 3 times, Rhys said. I know, she said. You made tea on the 3rd one anyway. Neither of them reached for anything more than that. They didn't need to. The room was still reading them quietly the way it had been built to, and for the first time since it had arrived, wrapped in condescension and a stamped blue teardrop, what it measured wasn't fragility. It was just 2 people finally letting something be true out loud. Something be true out loud.